Hello and good afternoon. I'm Bob Irwin. We're doing a special show today on this rash of gun laws, and you've seen the news at all this week. We are talking to you on Sunday afternoon because of all the things that have been happening. Today we have a special report from Attorney Don Grain, a firearms attorney here in Nevada and in California, who's been researching all of this stuff. And I'll comment a little bit later on, but basically I'm going to turn Don loose to bring you an update as to what's going on. There you are, sir.
Thank you, Bob. Your viewers and your listeners probably know that of the horrific events which have occurred in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio in the last 24 hours on August 3rd, 2019 and August 4th, 2019. We have some comments here which are based on our own research and based on points which are sent to us throughout the United States, including some which came in this morning about what is going on in their belief as far as gun control and who's behind all of this. Can we have the first slide, please? As to the Walmart shooting in El Paso, Texas, I make the following observations, which all of your viewers and all of your listeners must heed to. First, the people in Walmart or the shopping mall were soft targets. The perpetrator, who is confessed, who's in custody, was not expecting anyone to shoot back. And this man went in with ear protection from what we have seen from the video, which is all over the internet and all over television. Why? When you are in a shooting situation, not at a firearms range, not at a gun range, not popping off rounds in the desert, but when you are in a shooting situation and you draw your weapon and that adrenaline starts to pump in, most people go into what's known as auditory shutdown. That is, that their ear canals literally close up so that you don't hear the firing of the shots. So this man went in with ear protection because he knew that he was not going to be in fear with that adrenaline rushing through to his ears. He went in knowing that he's shooting people and he's picking off targets. And he knew that probably afterwards, if he's not dead, he's going to be answering questions from the police, because that's what he's doing right now. And he has, from what we can tell, no auditory problems because he was wearing ear protection. Now, if we can go off the slide for a moment. What is significant about August 3rd, 2019? And these are what these conspiracy theorists and attorneys and people in the gun business emailed me or texted me in the past, 15 hours since 2 o'clock this morning. On August 3rd, 2006, burqa-clad men killed 19 people in a suicide mission against a Shia mosque in Afghanistan. And yesterday, August 3rd, 1945, was the 75th anniversary of the day President Truman approved the dropping of the first atomic bomb. Terrorists, domestic terrorists, and international terrorists want you to remember that day. In the Oklahoma bombings in the 1990s, the day that the Edward R. Murrow, that Murrow building was bombed in Oklahoma City, that day was the anniversary of the day that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and FBI stormed the building in that Branch Davidian Church compound in Waco, Texas. That's what's important. They want you to remember that date. They want you to make that connection because this is the day that I become world famous because I am a domestic terrorist. Forget about the weapon. The weapon didn't kill anybody. This was well planned. If we may have the next slide as to Dayton, Ohio. In Dayton, Ohio, again at a nightclub, in the middle of the night, August 4th, 2019, we have a shooter who's presumably now dead, with police who were on the spot and killed him within a minute. There were soft targets who the perpetrator was not expecting anyone to shoot back. And according to the authorities, this perpetrator in Dayton, Ohio, went in with a large amount of extra ammunition to cause maximum damage. And according to news reports, one of the dead victims is the sister of the shooter. They're trying to say that maybe there was a problem there. But why did he go in armed with all kinds of with a large amount of ammunition? He went to kill a lot of people. The point which I received this morning at about 2:30, within an hour after the Dayton shooting, the person who's anonymous made the following observation. The shooters who do the killing and those who pay for or sponsor the shooters do not care about the helpless victims regardless of their age. And who were the shooters in Las Vegas? Who was the shooter in El Paso, Texas? Who was the shooter in Dayton, Ohio? Who were the shooters in Orlando, Dallas, Denver, San Bernardino, Bishop, Texas? These were nondescript individuals, perfect targets for perhaps a larger organization, someone who's trying to get back billions of dollars, which they lost in the 2016 election. Next slide, please. What is significant about August 4th, 2019? On August 4, 2006, Sri Lankan forces killed 17 French employees of the group entitled Action Against Hunger. Action contre faim. Innocent individuals. Here's the point, which was a subtle point, which I think the Democrats are going to pick up on, and all the anti-gunners. On August 4, 2014 is the day on which James Brady died. James Brady is the man who took the bullet for President Reagan and for whom the Brady background check is named. Now, we have a situation here where there's calls now for possible congressional action. We hear presidential candidates getting on board right now talking about gun control, that they want gun control, and all they're getting is free time from the networks. The issue is not gun control. The central issue is, what do we do about a society whose children are not reprimanded for the bad things they do, children who are growing up on these horrific video games, and a society which is so permissive and wants to be so permissive that everything we practically do is politically incorrect. So we will have essentially an Orwellian society which George Orwell predicted in 1948. And as to the legislation, we have a point being made by Mr. Bob Irwin.
Well, right now, there are a plethora of bills in Congress. My understanding is DIFI and a few others, if you listen to most of the Dem side political candidates talking about, we've got to do something, we've got to have a special session of Congress to address these issues. as in striking while the iron is hot. What we have proposed, either by these Democratic presidential candidates, you've seen them over and over on CNN and so forth, talking about we got to get rid of all these guns. First is an updated assault weapon ban. It's currently sitting in the Senate, Senate Bill 66. It requires, again, the easy stuff, the universal background check. The universal background check, the problem with that is not that it weeds out people that would fail the background check. It's that the people who fail the background check or get delayed, how do they get their rights back? There has to be something in the bill that says within a week or within a day or something, if they can't prove their case in front of a judge, that the person is relieved of that. We've had bans on magazines and so forth in California over the years, and the problem has become that if the guy then has to sue the government to get even. He has to prove he's innocent, that he's the wrong guy on the Social Security number, or it's somebody using his ID or so forth and so on. Anyway, there is an updated assault weapon ban. The universal background checks are there, as I said. There's a ban on standard capacity magazines, what they call high capacity magazines, anything that holds more than 10 shots. But now we have the definition of an assault weapon as any firearm capable of accepting a magazine that holds more than 10 shots. So if a magazine exists that fits that gun, you have an assault weapon, including like Ruger 1022s and all sorts of guns like that, because magazines exist. And the way it's worded, if it is capable of accepting a magazine, there you are. You have an assault weapon subject to seizure. To my mind, the most dangerous bill that is proposed now is avoiding of the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Firearms Act. This was enacted by Congress in 2005, and what it says is that manufacturers, distributors, and dealers to some extent are immune from liability if a third party misuses their product. Right now, Remington is being sued in federal court over the manufacture of the Bushmaster rifle, which they took over the company, that was used in the school shootings, the original big bad school shooting. Because the theory of repealing this is because they entered the gun into commerce. They introduced it into commerce. They are responsible for any misuse forever. What will happen there, if you have ever been around the law in your life or looked at any court cases, if you are liable because you entered something into commerce forever, all the gun manufacturers, distributors, and retailers will close the very next day. They have to, because they are liable. When I operated the gun store here in Las Vegas for 45 years, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many thousands and thousands and thousands of firearms that we sold. But if this becomes the law, that we void out this law and take it away, I am liable for how many guns that could have been misused by a third party who gave it to a fourth party who gave it to a fifth party. You stay liable forever. So the dealers, manufacturers, distributors will close because you can't buy insurance for that. I can't go to my insurance company now and say, by the way, I want to sign up for a policy that says I have $1 million coverage if somebody that I sold the gun to 30 years ago misused it 29 years ago or 20 years ago, I'm still liable. The firearms industry will fail to exist. There is a lesser bill in there also that requires individual firearms insurance for firearms owners, that because of liability you may need to buy liability insurance to protect yourself if you misuse your gun, like you have to buy car insurance. No, you don't have to buy insurance to protect yourself if you need a gun, because you won't have a gun. Nobody's going to repair guns. Nobody's going to sell you a gun. That in itself is onerous, but the getting rid of this 2005 Protection Act for firearms distributors and dealers will end the gun industry. Now, Mr. Green.
I agree with you, Bob. And today's broadcast and podcast is a call to arms for, in the sense of getting together for all legal gun owners to contact the legislators in their districts. And if you get no response, a call to arms to gather up in small groups, get together, and form a grassroots movement to support candidates in the next election who will vote to protect firearms rights under the Second Amendment if you're voting for a federal office, or for the Nevada revised statutes which protect your right in Nevada to own a firearm. And I emphasize that even our new background check, which will go into effect on January 1st, 2020, states specifically at my request, quote, "In Nevada, we have the right to bear arms. But with that right comes certain responsibilities to keep firearms out of the hands of domestic violence abusers and felons," end quote. That law, which will become effective in 6 months, tells us again that we have the right to bear arms. And for those people who are responsible to own them, background checks may work in certain points. And to add teeth to the background checks, right now, there's no effective enforcement if you fail a background check, but there are if there are multiple. One of the points I always highlight at gun shows is one of the points that the ATF might be looking at is if you're trying to get multiple firearms on multiple days from multiple dealers and you keep failing. There's a statute called attempt. And in federal court, an attempt to commit any federal crime is a serious offense, and it's a felony. Will a universal background check work? As Bob points out, there are problems. And with some of my clients, it's taking up to 30 months to clarify points before the FBI. And even with some of those, we come back with the original decision that we really can't make a decision because your case is undetermined because you got arrested 40 years ago. You got arrested 30 years ago and the records are gone. But at least I have an official determination that my client is not prohibited from owning the firearm, because there is a statute which says, a federal statute and enforced by the ATF, and a Nevada revised statute which says that if you have an unresolved case, a federal firearms licensee has the discretion to sell you that weapon. So there's some solace and there's some hope for some of these people. But for those, as Bob points out, wrong number, wrong social security number, and maybe it's accidentally punched in. Because right now, some of the gun dealers are using the electronic form 4473. And what happens in checking that and you're excited about buying that weapon, you forget that the social security number or any identifying number you put in was accidentally put in wrong, and you get a denial. It's going to take 24 to 30 months, possibly, to get that straightened out.
All right.
So, again, this is a call to arms in the sense of getting together. I'm not talking about violence, but your listeners have got to understand that this is very real. This is possibly going to happen this week. Look what happened with the bump stock regulations from the ATF. There's a note and comment period, which starts in December. The 90 days ends in March. It's now the law, ending bump stocks. So, and we've gone through that on a number of shows. So, your viewers, your listeners have to start getting together, and it's got to be immediate. It's got to be today. So, get off your couch, get off your recliner chair, call your friends, text them, email. Legitimately, let's get together. Let's call our legislator. Let's call our state senator. Let's call our city councilman. Let's call our county commissioner. Get something done. Start writing letters. It's got to be done.
As I've frequently said on my regular show, Fired Up with Bob Irwin, the way to defeat all of this stuff is to vote people into office that will change this. We used to go, and I've mentioned this several times, I want to sure I get it on this tape, that we have gone through lists and lists of who to vote for. This guy's for guns, this guy's against the Second Amendment, da-da-da-da-da. It's a lot easier now, since the country is so divided and since we have all these wackos running for office. It's easy. Vote for the R's, the Republicans. They are almost without exception pro-gun. The D's, the Democrats, are almost without exception trying to take your guns away. So if, when we re-elect Donald Trump, we re-elect a Congress to go with him, state legislatures to go with him, governors to go with him, where there are governors that are up for election, do that. You have to get out and vote. You have to get your friends to vote. It is just crucial because, in my opinion, we're about to lose America if we don't do that.
That is correct. And my final thought is this. It's somewhat philosophical. Today, we are submitting to the peaceful production of the means of destruction, to the perfection of waste, to a society which deforms the defenders and that which they defend. And they want to take away the right and the only property right mentioned in the United States Constitution. The only piece of property mentioned is the right to bear arms, which shall not be infringed. End of story. Thank you.
We hope you found this educational. We'll be back every Thursday, actually the next 2 Thursdays. Don is my guest on my show. Please tune in, and you'll find us on the internet there, firedupwithbobiRwin.com. Check it out, and we're going to announce some gun shows, some other things that are coming up that are unrelated to this particular problem. But I appreciate your paying attention. I appreciate you watching this video. Don?
Thank you.
One more time.
Thank you again. Thank you to your viewers.
Have a good afternoon.